that's visible for everybody.
You're good.
Very good. Okay. Okay. Well, I want to welcome everybody here this morning. Actually, I guess it's this afternoon now. Happy to talk with Jeff Walter today about the integrated data environment. We believe this is the evolution of project communications and information management in the AECO. And a lot of folks leave out the O, which we think is not fair, because the owners are a very important part of what we do. So we want to make sure we include that. As I mentioned, my name is Kelly Doyle. I'm with ProjectReady. Speaking with me today is Jeff. He's the Director of Digital Transformation for AECOM, and he's got a kind of the customer perspective on the IDE and how they've put that into place. But for our agenda today, we're going to talk about how we got here. You know, what we're at the IDE now, or at least that's what I'm proposing. And part of that is to understand how we got here. The current industry landscape, where the industry is as a whole, why we need another acronym. Everybody's always throwing lots of acronyms around. Reminds me of my military days. There was an acronym for everything. Why do we need another one? Hopefully that'll come out on top. What is the desired industry future state? What's our vision for the IDE? And then IDE in real life, that's where Jeff's going to go ahead and cover that information for us. And we'll definitely leave some time for Q&A. All right, so back in the day, how did we get here? And really back in the day is not all that long ago if you think about it in the big picture. There was lots of paper, but we had defined processes. Somebody wrote something down in a notebook, got a phone call from the office. They knew what information they were collecting, what information they were sharing with the office. So the folks in the field, they used notebooks. They had printed plans all over the place, lots of phone calls. You write that information, pass it to someone else, they'll get it back to the office. They were very defined processes. The office needed lots of people to compile all this information from the field and then manually enter it into a number of different computer applications, right? And the technology at the time, primarily office-based, really all office-based because of the size of the computers, and there was just a lack of connectivity. We couldn't efficiently connect devices between the field and the office. So as we started to gain more applications in the industry and more computing power, saw the rise of the ERP. Now, this was great because you can connect your accounting package to your project management and to your HR system. Everything was kind of tied together in a single package, which was helpful, helped folks realize the value of integration. But within the same bubble, you had applications that did some things well and a lot of things not so well. What provided some challenges in the field, however, is that there's lots of small boxes on the screen because we can capture and store all this information. But if you want to translate that for folks who are actually dealing with this out in the field, there's way too many things on the screen for me to deal with, stressed everybody out, and they don't possibly have the time to learn how to do all this. So there's a lot of resistance from folks outside the office to use the technology at hand. So when we look at the technology as a whole, it's still primarily office-based with some use by folks in the field with laptops, but minimally. And connectivity is still very expensive and very slow, which makes it hard to use and take advantage of. So what really made a difference was the rise of mobile technology. And this created an explosion of mobile apps. So the field would receive their plans digitally, right? Transformational. You could take photos, as many as you want. And if, you know, don't worry about taking too many photos, just send them and take them and send them. And we could also digitize existing paper-based processes. It was transformational. The office, lots of information coming in, but it's stored in lots of places, right? There was really a lack of integration when apps first came out. And I think I see some folks shaking their heads like they felt this pain. How do you deal with the volumes of information? Lots of people had to deal with that via emails. I know that's everybody's favorite today, right? So let's take it, you know, the technology at the time, it's the tech is growing, it's there, but adoption is still a bit slow. Connectivity is improving, but creating a ton of data silos. That doesn't work well for everybody. So then your common data environment started to gain ground and integrating apps with these platforms. Let's call them platforms. This really, by digitizing these workflows, really helped productivity. It also helped with some of the data silos as well. Some of the platforms are design focused, some are construction focused. So BIM 360 would be an example of one of your design focused platforms. Procore, PlanGrid would be examples of a construction focus. Some did a little bit of both, but they primarily concentrated on one area or the other. And we're a long way from having a single system that does everything. So when we look at our connectivity, our technology, connectivity is much better and cheaper. But now we have platforms that are more phase-based and creating fewer but larger data silos. And that's what I want to key on, is we've really gained improvement, but now we have these platforms with lots of information in them, but they're compartmentalizing that information primarily into different roles or different phases. So the folks over at McKinsey did a real great job in their publication they did last year, which is the next normal in construction. You'll notice that our current industry landscape is very siloed. It's fragmented. It's highly complex. There's not much in the way of end-to-end processes and tools that connect those together. That makes it harder logistically. It makes it harder for communications. Our communication channels are all over the place. You got folks doing text messages, you got folks picking up phones, sending emails. How do you consolidate all that information together? How do you coordinate all of the different data points and schedules between all these different organizations that come together in the built environment in this landscape? So let's take a breather and say, great, I love the history, Kelly, but why do we need another acronym? It's a great question. So on the left-hand side, you'll see common data environment. That word is thrown around a lot right now. Procore, PlanGrid, BIM 360, they're all describe themselves as common data environments because they're bringing together all of the information inside the realm of the project. I would beg to differ, okay? Because they are primarily role-based, because they're primarily phase-based, they do a great job of integrating the different applications that are used in that particular phase of the project. But when it comes to bringing information together between those platforms, they all fall down. So let's look to a standard that's out there on the international stage right now. It's called ISO 19650. I'm just going to read something to you because it's very clear on what this standard calls for. And it's speaking to owners. And I believe that's a prime audience on the computer right now. So ISO 19650 says there's a common industry misconception that the common data environment is a technology solution only, and that it always is a single solution. It further goes to clarify that the range of technologies might be required. It's therefore important to establish the functionality needed and how single or multiple systems might support this functionality early in a project. So in the beginning, before you get started, you need to have an idea, a landscape of how those pieces of technology are going to come together. So this common misconception that the CDE concept is a technology or a solution overshadows the most important aspect, which is the process or the workflow. So let's keep that in mind. It also goes on to say that it's the owner's responsibility to set this up. You can delegate it to an organization. AECOM is a great example of an organization that owners will engage beyond their design and construction services. They also look to them to help advise on what technology platforms to set up. And then again, our friends over at McKinsey in their latest report, it's very specific in what they're saying. The construction technology ecosystem is shifting toward integrated software platforms that better serve customer needs. You are the owners. You assume all the risk financially, legally, all of that. So why not empower yourselves to bring that ecosystem together in the form that you're able to control? Let's jump back a slide. Sorry about that. Okay, so what's our desired future state? I'm going to start with the end in mind. It's something I learned in the military a long time ago. It's called backwards planning. Where do you want to go and how are you going to get there? If you do that, you'll avoid the pitfalls of falling down into that rabbit hole too quickly and ending up in a place that you didn't want to go. So our desired end state really is the digital twin. Now, I know there's a long way to go to get there, right? on a monthly basis with the Construction Progress Coalition, lead a roundtable that looks at the digital twin and how do we get there? What standards, what systems need to come in place? We've got a year's worth of discussions and we're just scratching the surface. So that's the blue line that you see around the diagram, the digital twin. That's where we want to end up. So how do we get there? We have this need for collaborative design. Folks need to get engaged early in the process. Industrialized construction. Let's manufacture our components to these assets in a factory environment where we can control things. We can tie that directly into the design platforms that folks used to build. And then create a productized supply chain where everybody is working together to deliver that on time to get it built the way we want to. And one thing that you'll notice is these little gold lines that are all over the place. We call this the golden thread. This is the golden thread of data. So how do you weave that golden thread into that process? Well, you need to have a spool of thread sitting at the beginning of the process, right? And that thread has to let itself out as you go through the process. So that way, when you get to that end result of a digital twin, you have information from the beginning that flows all the way through to turnover and the life of the digital twin beyond. Jeff's going to talk more about that later when he talks. But one of the things I wanted to highlight here, the white lines in between all the little shapes that you see, that is where an IDE and its role really helps to come to the future state. All those white lines are governance. That's where applications touch each other. Your global organizations must be security first. So you need to have that governance in order for information to share around. And you need to have this wrapper on a particular project. So you got to keep that security tight as you flow through. So let's start out with an IDE, the integrated data environment. This is what we're here to explain today. How do you bring all these pieces together? So let's define an IDE. It's a system of systems. It's the evolution of project communications designed to consume, manage, and deliver project information across various stakeholders, actors, phases, and common data environments in any project. And then within the constraint or the construct of all of your projects, you're going to have different sets of tools, different common data environments, different stakeholders, different systems that you need to make sure you can bring together in a secure way so that it rolls up and flows through to you. So workflows across connected project data systems and the facilitation of security, governance, communications, and collaboration is the key distinction of an integrated data environment. So it all starts with a secure framework. As I mentioned earlier, owners, that's your responsibility to set up that secure framework, okay? Now, in this example, I'm going to show that it's built on Microsoft 365. That's intentional. Microsoft 365 is an enterprise scale platform. It allows you to connect all your systems together. The Azure Active Directory is the authentication platform that allows all of the different Microsoft applications to come together and all of your data to flow through those systems. So it just makes sense to me to start with that enterprise scale that you see within Microsoft 365. Now, all of this really has a goal of connecting the people, the platforms, and the companies on a project. You'll notice that on the first floor, you have Microsoft 365 and SharePoint. That's giving you a place to connect folks. Microsoft Teams would be an example of something that comes in there as well with that platform. So you have your communication layer. You have your place to store things in SharePoint. You have Microsoft 365 giving you that authentication. Now, you need to bring in your other platforms that you're going to use. You'll see BIM 360 on the screen for your design platform, Procore or PlanGrid for your construction platform, and just keep building the floors. Add the floors to the building. Next would be an owner system. Could be something interim, or it could go straight to your FM system, right? But when you're talking about multiple systems and all the people on these particular projects, it's key to be able to have that automated, right? Automated administration and workflows are creative. Jeff will talk a little bit about that later as well, because that comes into huge consideration on the scale of the projects that he is dealing with. Now, it's all great to tie these systems together, but what is there on what should be there really on every project? You need a way to communicate within the context of the project. So think about Microsoft Teams as an example. When we set up Microsoft 365, your Teams comes along with it. You can start communicating with your stakeholders, whether there's 2 or 200, right from the get-go. You can search across all the different platforms that you use. Lots of emails flying around, you need to be able to search across those too. Again, within the constraints of that Microsoft 365 framework, that's why I've selected that as our platform of choice there. And then auditing and reporting. All that data needs to reside somewhere. Store that transactional data in a database, so now you can report at a PMO level. You can look at not just a single project, but multiple projects, and then take that visualization or the data and make a visualization with Power BI. So what we're also trying to consider, though, is there's lots of different I'll call them integrated subsystems and collaboration platforms. So there are certain things that would make more sense to tie into BIM 360. So your assembly, your manufacturing, your design consulting, all that is a great idea to tie into BIM 360 because that's the right for that phase. The logistics and distribution systems, well, that could be in either one of them. So you're seeing how it's tied in there. And then your subcontractor systems probably makes more sense to tie into your build platforms. But again, you need to have your collaboration and communication wrap around all of that. So all the people on the folks, all the folks on the project can communicate the way that they need to. This has to happen as this virtual building grows from the foundation all the way to the top, from planning to design to build and operation. You need this secure framework, the communication and collaboration that I mentioned previously. Creating an ecosystem that delivers an integrated approach to your project management, your project control, and your execution. You'll notice our golden thread is back, right? It needs to tie through this entire process with a goal of driving efficiency through improved process and interoperability. You heard me talk about process before. The ISO standard says that's what everybody keeps forgetting. The interoperability, that's these systems working together. Great, they integrate in some way, but can you take and have workflows span those systems so that way you can get the job done? You can share information accurately, timely, okay? Now, think of a single project completed and then other projects in different points of, it could be anything from the pursuit stage all the way through to near completion. That's why you see the different new secure frameworks all within that particular context, with a goal of leveraging that entire framework to apply to all of the projects in your portfolio, and then give you essentially a system of systems all wrapped together in that same collaboration space, that same ability to do your reporting, your visualizations, things of that nature. Now, that's all pretty. You can see it from the outside, but how does this happen? Well, you start with creating a secure framework. Process over platform. Doesn't matter which systems that you use, there needs to be a way for those to tie together securely. And you can see some of the most popular ones in our industry represented here on the screen on the left-hand side. Now, inside the little cutout there in the middle, you'll see where we have on the right-hand side are your repeatable processes. And this is where it comes into big play. Document control is the forgotten child in all of this, but that's really where so much of your risk comes from. When people do not share the right information because they're not communicating, or they share the wrong information at the wrong time. Document control helps to prevent that. Your project management and connecting those workflows across the systems, we really feel like that's the amplifier. So I'm going to take a deep breath and pass things over to Jeff and let him talk a little bit about AECOM and how they're utilizing IDEs.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Welcome to my kitchen here in Toronto, Canada. Probably a lot of people in the world have seen this kitchen, but you know, it's okay. And following up on Kelly there, who did a great kind of presentation on you know, the kind of framework of IDE. I know definitely that he didn't mention for sure, and you see his logo kind of coming through there, but ProjectReady as an organization, as a startup kind of contributing technology to this space, you know, they're certainly to be commended from a leadership perspective in this field. And that's why AECOM, in a global sense, have partnered over the last year or so with ProjectReady. to uncover kind of those benefits that Kelly went through, that IDE provides projects that AECOM is involved with. And so we thank definitely ProjectReady for kind of the evolution of IDE at AECOM. But I'll just stay on this slide. Oh, sorry, just flip back there. I'll stay on the opening slide here because in this part of the presentation, I want to talk about the role that a certain type of project is playing in the evolution of IDE innovation. And probably everyone on this call has probably heard of that concept of a mega project. And I think even from the economic outlook we saw in the first bit of this conference, there's a growing trend towards mega projects kind of being a key force as for post-pandemic economic revival. But they're also playing a key role in innovation as well. And I'll kind of, the next few slides will kind of explain why, but we saw in Kelly's presentation as well, that kind of like stark difference in a way between the common data environment idea and the integrated data environment. And as probably everyone knows as well, that common data environment as an idea in itself, it took a long time to kind of come to. Me coming from a BIM kind of background, common data environment is something that, it's almost 10 years kind of in the making. We kind of got to that point where it was kind of working and then a shift here. So the interesting point is, the transition to IDE as a concept, we think will be dramatically accelerated and not take that 10 years, but almost kind of happen rapidly, kind of coinciding with the shift in how we work. And mega projects in particular are a key driver of that accelerated innovation. Okay, now next slide. Okay. So here, knowing the kind of wide audience at this presentation, probably familiar in some way, particularly into kind of campus building and major infrastructure project building related to organizations. But I'll be kind of providing a perspective on the I guess the left side of the idea of a mega project here, and which actually kind of have a lot of overlap because. I should introduce myself. I guess taking a step back here, but as mentioned earlier, I'm the Director of Digital Transformation for AECOM Canada, and my particular focus is in alternative delivery. And it's this new emerging contractual framework for building infrastructure, building cities, building major infrastructure projects using public-private contract frameworks. And there's many of those kind of evolving kind of as we speak. We could do a whole nother presentation on that concept itself. But that's my particular focus. And the unique contractual relationships in P3 facilitated bigger projects and faster projects. And that's accelerating very quickly here. So my experience kind of coming from this infrastructure, big infrastructure world, the mega project concept, can relate to any type of mega project really. But in my perspective, certainly as I mentioned, P3 projects in particular kind of impact in the construction and owner industry. It will be a catalyst for post-pandemic economic revival internally at AECOM, and I think that was highlighted again in the earlier economic presentation. There's a gear up for kind of that expectation. Being in Canada here, kind of even offering a bit of a different lens. This is already accelerated in the Canadian market, and in particular, Canada's become a hotbed globally for P3 infrastructure delivery. The majority of the projects that we work on are pretty massive. Most of the time, $5 billion plus in terms of capital costs. Many times these projects are designed, obviously AECOM kind of coming from a design perspective, but the contractual arrangements are sometimes design build finance, and more often including operations and maintenance as part of the overall contract framework. And this is important, kind of relating back to the IDE concept that Kelly mentioned, is that it's a reality now that data has to flow through that golden thread through all the different phases of these projects in order to be successful over the long term. It's becoming a reality. Also, with that scale of capital comes the number of stakeholders who are participating on projects at a time. We're seeing from a design perspective, mega projects that have over 1,000 designers sometimes 25 to 100 different sub-consultants kind of working on a project at the same time. And again, relating to Kelly's kind of security framework as a starting point for these projects, we've been able to leverage that IDE concept to manage the administration of document security on projects this scale. The scale of project data, IDE kind of allowing kind of platform movement of data into the various silos. There's a scalability kind of built in that allows us to deal with the massive quantity of data that exists on these projects. For sure, this is about interface and accountability between different stakeholders and the very sensitive kind of space between private and public infrastructure building for sure. And IDEs and good data workflows and process have helped us manage that interface layer there. And as I mentioned in that first slide there, the mega project, I'll definitely have no problem kind of publicly stating that these projects are creating innovation opportunities for our industry, the construction industry in particular. Not only in terms of the scale and the budgets associated with these types of projects, allowing even within mega project budgets for innovation, budgeting specifically for that, but also in combination of the risk involved with these types of P3 projects. There's a very high incentive and very high risk of penalties if deadlines are made on these types of projects. And innovation has really been forced into the industry to manage and mitigate that risk, particularly with data for sure. Next slide. So what has helped us, IDE as a key data concept, what is the key kind of innovation growth area that's helped us manage projects of this scale from beginning planning stage and right through to working into construction and then handing off designs to post-construction operations and maintenance, for example. And certainly a key innovation growth area at AECOM is this idea of digital twin, which Kelly mentioned as the wrapper for IDE in a sense. And certainly this is a big key innovation growth area at AECOM in terms of managing kind of P3 projects of this scale. But we're also seeing even for example, in campus building, I know Kelly's been involved with a number of projects on that side of things where digital twin is also a prevailing kind of concept for the wrapper that helps support IDE on projects. All right, next slide. Let's dive into digital twin a little bit. Very high level here. This is a vision from AECOM perspective, how on these big mega projects we view digital twin. And it kind of breaks down into three kind of core pillars, again, crossing over the many different phases that AECOM could potentially play a role in kind of on the life cycle of a project. And of course, you can see all the golden threads kind of winding their way between these core pillars for sure. But I won't go too much into each one individually, but you can see from a vision perspective, the digital twin does include your BIM-driven assets. So at AECOM, obviously, we're a BIM-driven organization from a design perspective, and how we set up and deliver our BIM models as part of a design, are prepared in a sense for kind of full life cycle kind of thinking. We have, of course, kind of the post-construction, the idea of real-time, adding data, adding sensors, adding IoT kind of elements to kind of control real-time information. That's another kind of growing area and kind of important part of the kind of digital twin infrastructure. But I'll jump back to the first one on the slide there. At the very root of it, as what Kelly described, starting with that secure framework and kind of building out, is project management. And it doesn't get all the attention as the BIM stuff, and particularly kind of the future of sensors and real-time data with digital twins, etc. But it's really IT security, it's project controls, it's document management through the life cycle of these projects, where AECOM is kind of building out a digital twin vision to help support these types of projects. Next slide. So why is AECOM embracing IDE? And I'll keep this again pretty high level here, but just kind of touching on the core value propositions, why we're working with ProjectReady and why we're embracing the concept of IDE. As Kelly mentioned, eliminating data silos. This is not just about software platform data silos, but this is interdisciplinary design silos. This is silos that exist between design and construction, different stakeholders, permits, environmental, you name it, kind of contributing to silos. And IDE is allowing us to break down those barriers for sure. There's no question about that. IDE, when data is moving effectively from platform to platform, and in some cases, for example, using ProjectReady as a key catalyst for that data exchange between platforms, it actually ends up creating the opportunity for better designer user experiences for us. So now we don't have to log into 6 different platforms to achieve a certain goal. We can log in with one, and that one is facilitating a better design data experience on projects. Certainly, of course, like this is the topic of the day for sure, but doing more projects with less. This is been a really evident metric that's come out of our early use embracing of IDE, is that when data is integrated, you just simply freeze up time that would have been more manual, mundane kind of data processing, allowing you to achieve much higher rates of productivity. So we're finding that already, and even showing dramatic almost increases in our ability to produce design faster. And of course, on these types of projects, mega projects in particular, with sensitive data and so many different stakeholders involved with these projects, I definitely can't stress the importance of an initial security framework in the administrating of kind of an IDE. So digital twin is becoming AECOM's business now. All those elements that I described in the last slide, building these systems to help support our design, but as Kelly mentioned, also supporting clients as well in terms of from a solutions perspective, allowing owners and construction companies, even our partners on projects, to facilitate digital twin. And then, of course, kind of leading to the potential of adding even more intelligence once you kind of have that data platform and integrated data environment working effectively. Okay, next slide. So from taking kind of a different look from looking up at the owners and kind of project sponsor side of things, and the kind of interesting thing to note is the value proposition in our view is almost essentially the same. Instead of making complex projects simple, as Kelly mentioned, this is about kind of the bigger picture event portfolios, eliminating the data silos across projects, across groups, stakeholders, etc., creating those same kind of better data user experiences on that side of things. I'll also mention as well, kind of adding on to the doing more projects with less concept. And one kind of emerging trend that we've been seeing for sure is on the P3 side of things, is the flexibility with contracts. So when you have an IDE framework kind of set up, it allows more flexibility in terms of maybe breaking up projects in different ways that would not be possible before. For example, we're working on a big subway project design in Toronto here, and we have a parallel systems and operations and maintenance contract going on at the same time. Without proper data integration, without proper integration, those kind of parallel processes will not be possible. So we think technology and better data process is certainly driving more unique potential contractual integrations and a bit more agile, if you've probably heard that term kind of in the past. And in the same way for owners, digital twin is becoming owner's business. We're certainly seeing prescription in our latest RFPs and pursuits that prescribe digital twin requirements, and particularly the handover of as-built construction models into asset management and how that works. It's becoming very prescribed. So in reality, the value propositions across design, across construction, across project sponsorship and owners is really pretty similar. And I think that's a sign of something that's working. Next slide. And this is just the last slide I'll add here. Kelly mentioned at the very beginning, actually, this concept of a system of systems. And, we're kind of breaking this out a little bit. You can see at a very simple level, kind of the three kind of key interfaces on these types of P3 infrastructure projects. Designer working closely with contractor, working closely with owner, and, trying to achieve that industry state that kind of Kelly described below with those IDEs, those white lines, they kind of form the interfaces between those different components. But the key point here is that, the owner kind of is looking at that bigger picture here. And so each individual project, in a sense, from an owner perspective, represents the opportunity to kind of be that system of systems, that system within a bigger system. So that's, just kind of a very quick lens into AECOM, and particularly how we're using both IDE and the digital twin concept to help support us and be successful with these mega projects that we're actively in pursuit of.
All right. Well, Jeff, appreciate your input. It's always interesting to start out with a new concept. You start explaining it to everybody and they go, well, great, love it. But has anybody used this before? So getting your perspective there, I think, is key. You'll see contact info for both Jeff and I on the screen. If you have any interest to learn more after the conference here and you want to reach out to either one of us, please do. We're happy to provide whatever help that we can. Let me go ahead and take this off the screen. We'll stop the share and open it up for any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, I'm going to open this up for questions. Thank you guys for presentation. Very insightful. Appreciate it. I've gotten some good feedback so far on it. And we have a couple of questions in here and I'll get to those here in just a moment. What I wanted to do is say, anybody who has any questions, you can either put it in the chat box and I'll be happy to ask it, or if you want to just unmute, ask the question and then remute again, that'd be fine too. But let me just start with a couple of these that's already in here. And I think Jeff and Kelly, you can probably see them, but the first one was from Randy Paulson. I don't know if he feels like this has already been answered sufficiently, but he was asking how far along is AECOM in this journey that you were just talking about? And Randy Paulson is with Duke Energy.
Well, thanks, Randy. I'm very glad that actually you called it a journey because it's probably one that's not going to end, but it's definitely a journey. We first actually got introduced to the concept of IDE, to be honest with you, in November 2019 at the Autodesk AU presentation. That's where ProjectReady kind of made their splash into the market. So we kind of quickly picked up on this whole idea that was, that they were trying to kind of facilitate with their technology process. And then, so we've been pretty much about a year on this journey, over a year here. We've implemented this IDE concept on a half a dozen mega projects in the Canadian market for sure, and that's growing kind of rapidly. The projects across America and all around the world, to be honest with you. But the reality is even the concept of IDE is so new. So I don't think there would actually be too many who even have more experience than that. It's about a year into this journey, and as I mentioned, it is a journey. Like, there's no question that IDE as a concept has certainly facilitated those better efficiencies and productivities from a design perspective, and better user experiences from a design perspective. But certainly one of the big challenges, and probably everyone has faced here, is dealing with some of the cultural shifts related to kind of data thinking, embracing of new technologies, and particularly engagement with our construction partners. As everyone's probably aware, and kind of McKinsey outlined in that report on the next frontier in construction, there has certainly been a very kind of limited growth in terms of productivity from a technology perspective on the construction side of things. So, the interface between design and construction, and kind of making sure and finding a system, like IDE, that works at the interface between those kind of big players involved with these projects, it's certainly a challenging one. And that's part of the ongoing journey, is kind of tackling this from a design perspective, by kind of raising up the level of awareness and education in construction, and of course to our project owners and sponsors as well. So there's certainly a lot going on in that journey, but we're still very early in it.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Let me move on to the next question here from Tracy Addis from GSA. Assuming mega projects make the money and small projects are using that profit, when pivoting from mega to small projects, how can IDE apply and assist a multiple projects program manager? What kind of advice, recommendations, input do you have on that?
Sure, it's a great question. So as an example, we actually use ProjectReady to create a small integrated data environment for our two operating companies that we have. We have a software services company around the Microsoft Stack, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, things like that, with customers like New York Police Department, TD Ameritrade, large UPS, large organizations, right? But it's a very specific type of project going on there. Small projects, but high impact. With it, we'd use it also to run our software company, or our product company. So it's a very flexible system. And at different stages of different projects, there's any number of systems that are in play. In my previous life, I ran the construction technology consulting practice at JB Knowledge, and I was the chief analyst for the annual construction technology report. Over multiple years, I saw no less than 2, and on average closer to 6, individual applications by each company on a project. Whether it was a small, even something as simple as doing a Slurpee machine rollout at 7-Eleven, to larger design and construction projects, there's always multiple systems in play. Right now, the platforms that we have connected are SharePoint, BIM 360, Procore, PlanGrid, Bluebeam, Box. But certainly there's opportunities to add others. Whenever we bring folks together on those projects, there's overhead to setting folks up. There's overhead to setting up a project plan. In a previous life before that, I was the director of innovation and technology for a multi-site program management firm for Walgreens, 7-Eleven, organizations like that. My project executives did not want to have a project plan. They just wanted a tracker sheet, because it took too much time to set up a project plan, even though they said the project's only over in 4 days. Yeah, but there's 100 stores at a time, and there's 22 weeks worth of lead up time to get to that project that really does need a plan, but they don't need it to take longer to set up the plan than it does to do the project. By templatizing the projects, by templatizing the content repositories in SharePoint or Box, we are able to give repeatable processes and structure to those smaller projects, okay? So you can have the same controls that you put in place on a big project, but on a small project that only lasts a few days. The opportunities are really endless there. Jeff, you might talk about how much of an impact it's had on you guys being able to add people to the project or take people off the project as things progress.
Oh yeah, there's no question about those efficiencies, but I'll just kind of add another point about that small projects, big projects idea. Certainly, probably everyone's aware AECOM definitely has a wide range of projects that we are part of from a design perspective, from very small intersections to big, smart cities and these kind of P3 projects. So, certainly, as I kind of mentioned, that idea of scale thinking, what that IDE kind of brings. And certainly, philosophically, IDE has to provide that scale both up and down. So really, those same processes need to work on a small scale as on a large scale. But we just happen to be in a lot of large scale, so it facilitates a lot of the innovation that kind of trickles down, in a sense, to those small projects, kind of facilitating the innovation and the budget for that. So I agree 100%. The idea that an IDE solution needs to be able to scale small or big.
Great, thank you. Hey, I'm going to ask this next question that's on here, and then I'm going to jump to another one on data security. But I like this next one from Mike Trotto because it's referring to ROI. Mike is with Owens Corning, but he's asking what are some examples of tangible cost savings over a portfolio of smaller projects as compared to the initial investment in software or system strategy development, culture change, those kinds of things. So let me just ask that, and I want to jump over this issue of data security, which is always a big topic as well.
Jeff, I think that's probably best for you to answer because you're seeing those tangible benefits, which you could apply appropriately to the size of the project.
Yeah. I guess without going too much into the weeds, certainly some of the tangible benefits. Again, like thinking about like a large project and the kind of system of a systems idea, a portfolio of smaller projects kind of getting the same benefits in a sense as a larger project. But tangible cost benefits or savings benefits include IT administration, kind of managing of users coming in and out of the system and controlling that data security, as we talked about. We use IDE to manage, to facilitate our task management environment on our project management environment on projects. So how we distribute tasks, for example, across a wide spectrum of organizations participating on a project, and also tasks that are being facilitated by multiple platforms, to be honest with you as well. Task management, document control process, for example, management of an RFI system, using IDE to facilitate data, process around data in SharePoint, ProjectReady, kind of getting approvals in Procore, that kind of idea. That certainly makes it possible through IDE. So document control, project management on the ground, it doesn't matter if you're in a small project or a big project, all of those kind of core elements are actually the same.
Yeah, great. Hey, thank you. I want to get one more question here because I've gotten some text that aren't all in the chat box here about data security. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say something about this, but we need to end in about 3 minutes. So
sure.
So let me go ahead and just read this one in here because I think it captures it. Data security and keeping data sovereign seems like quite a challenge for these interconnected platforms. If it's personnel related, obviously you have HIPAA considerations internationally, GDPR considerations. Maybe give just a few minutes around data security, data integrity, and how complex that setup may be, and how reliable.
So I'll give the high level view, and maybe Jeff, you can circle back, but we do not store anything in our system. We leverage our clients' underlying technology. So ProjectReady sits on top of the owner's Microsoft 365 tenant. So the SQL database where all the transactions are stored, it's in your tenant. The SharePoint, the content that's stored there, it's in your tenant. You've already passed security for Microsoft 365 within your organization, or you have not, right? If you're using BIM 360, it's your BIM 360. If you're using your plan grid, it's your system. So all the GDPR stuff, it's on you. It's in your system. We just give you a secure way to tie that together through automation. The information security is critical. If we don't do that, if your IDE provider does not do that, that's a manual task that's time consuming and expensive. We automate that. because of our history with those processes. Jeff, anything to add?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's certainly like the idea of IDE, integrated data environment, and tools like ProjectReady, which really just facilitate process around data that's stored in kind of your own internal organization systems. In a sense, it should already be passing those security elements. And for sure, AECOM, as a global organization, we do work on the highest security projects that are out there. And on our own tenants and our own systems, we have ways of kind of controlling that security. So, it's driven corporately is the kind of key element. Now, when you are talking about definitely the data security as it relates to P3 projects, for example, where design and contract and building is kind of going on at the same time, where who owns that data, what's the contractual relationship. Those are definitely, that's also a journey as well on every project. And that has to be kind of provisioned for on a project. But I also say at the granular level on projects, certainly, for example, we've leveraged the security capability with ProjectReady here to control, by role, who's seeing what on a SharePoint site, right? So our contractor, our CJV partners have access to this library. Our sub-consultants have access to these libraries. AECOM as a whole has access to these libraries. The IDE and the facilitation of security kind of provisioning through that kind of IDE concept allows us to get more granular with data security on projects. And even though there's still the big arching question of overall data security, at the granular level on projects, IDE is providing a solution for us on the ground.
Great. Hey, man, there's a lot more questions in here. I wish I could get to them. Please connect with these guys through the app. I feel like I'm on a cable talk show here where the computer's about to cut me off, and I've got a second. So,
Yeah, okay.
Hey, thanks a million, Jeff and Kelly. Check them out on the app. Connect with them. Thanks for the huge level of engagement. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Talk soon.
We appreciate
Great,
it.
thanks. Thanks, everyone.